Welcome to Muslim Billionaires Podcast, episode 10. Today, it's just a thought that was crossing my mind. Forgive yourself. As cliche as that sounds, we see it on Twitter. We see even within our religion, what forgiveness actually looks like. But I want to delve deep into what the idea and the concept of what forgiveness looks like and how it kind of hurdles you. Right? So for me, the way I see it, when you're not striving to get somewhere or limit yourself through your skill sets or the thoughts of you imagining yourself and being better than you are, than what you currently are, a lot of it comes with the foundation of your past, right? Some of it, obviously I've tapped into certain elements of why we limit ourselves, and there's limitations to where we're trying to get to because of the influences from other people, from what we see in the consumption of content, which could be a different subject later on. But currently, sometimes, and especially what we're talking about, forgiveness is a big part of it, right? To not go forward is because you keep reminding yourself of what happened in the past, which we're going backwards. The reason why to that is a sense of guilt. Sense of guilt of, for whatever reason, something that you've done to yourself, something you've done to other people, some that you've done to, again, people that were really important to you. So there's such a struggle when it comes down to that because, again, a lot of us, our future self, we can't have or imagine our future self to thank us if we're in a place of having the mindset of thinking, what have I done before that makes me worthy of where I should be going to? These are questions that can be completely unnecessary, and it could take you to a place where, again, it could take you to a dark place where you can never come out of. A few episodes ago, I was talking about how you can get to a place, an elderly version of yourself, where regret starts to relinquish within yourself, and you start to relinquish this regret of yourself to the point where you start projecting that to the younger generation that's coming up, where failure only looks amazing to you when you tell people that failure is always going to be there, right? Now, there's two different ways of telling people about failures. There's one, being aware of the path you're taking, but another of saying failure is a stepping stone to success, right? But the other part of it is the reason why, a lot of us, or at least see ourselves or neglect ourselves from thinking that the elderly version is not going to talk to these younger generation about what they should be doing, is because we haven't forgave ourselves. We haven't forgave ourselves to the point where sometimes the limitations of what we're trying to get to startles, What I come to realize is when we're trying to take steps forward, we imagine ourselves also taking steps backwards. And that's disturbing because why? Right? I always say there's a process of evaluation of how we start thinking of ourselves, but sometimes the process of evaluation doesn't come with telling ourselves our past does count, but simultaneously, if I've asked for forgiveness from God and asked for forgiveness from those that I hurt, and I forgave myself for it, why do I allow my past to dictate my future? It doesn't make sense. Why do I continue to harm myself and, not inspire somebody, especially in a subject like this, that may need to hear my voice? Why? Right? And the questions that you don't ask yourself a lot start to harm you. Now, the part of forgiveness sometimes comes with the people around you don't allow you to have the space to forgive yourself because they remind you of your past, right? Constantly, they keep telling you, this is what you used to do, this is what happened back then, who do you think you are now? Or they subtly have this underlying message telling you, oh, who do you think, what is it? Or worst case, or the worst version of that is, how will those people, you imagine those people talking about you, right? You have this image of what these people saying these things about you, right? Saying, hey, why would you start to step into something that is so much bigger than you are, but yet you've done this in your past, right? And a part of that doesn't give you the space to actually start forgiving yourself because you continuously being reminded of everything that came from your past. But the steps towards or straying away from that is obviously surrounding yourself with people that actually remind you of your past, right? It's not a bit of a reminder of your past of what you've done in the past, but also reminding you of your past of the people that were surrounding you while you were making those decisions. Those are decisions that are not, those are decisions that were made back then. Those are not decisions that you're making now. If you're making another form of that, right? A lot of us are trying to create this place of ourselves with carrying some of our past with us. Well, you can't have both. You have to commit to a side. You have to pick a side. For you, if you're trying to move forward, you can't continue to remind yourself of the past if you're bringing people from your past. Two, also remind you of your past, of what you used to do. That's unfair to the better version of yourself. How do you want to be the better version of yourself if you're continuously bringing things from the worst version of yourself that you're trying to grow from, right? And how are you going to remind people of that as well if you're continuously being triggered by that and your mindset continues to shift to that? Being isolated at times can get your thoughts to that as well, right? If you're not surrounding yourself with good people, right? Because there's the opposite of that, right? There's the people that remind you of your past, of the bad decisions that you've made if you did have a past. And then there's the good version of yourself where you surround yourself with people that remind you of who you are right now and making the better and striving for the better version of who you could be. I don't believe in being the best version of yourself because every single one of us is going to die learning. So how does it make sense for us to be the best version of ourselves, quote unquote, when we know there's no such thing as that? But then also we don't really tap into what the worst version of ourselves looks like. And a part of that is the lack of forgiveness, right? Forgiving yourself and forgiving those people that are surrounding you, that could remind you of your past, but also not cutting ties, at least, or distancing yourself from them to the point where they can also be a source, you can also be a source of inspiration to them, right? I don't believe in disconnection. I believe in distancing. I believe in the idea of knowing that there's a healthy distance between you and that person or you and those people that remind you of your past, but also simultaneously being open to having conversations with them whenever they need to speak to you, right? So that's a distance with being open-minded and having good discourse or a healthy discourse with them, right? Family, friends, loved ones, doesn't matter, right? But going back to what I was saying, I don't believe in the best version of ourselves. I believe in being the better version of ourselves because we're always being better, even to the day we pass away. We're always striving to become better. But there's the opposite version of that is being the worst version of yourself. And a lot of us don't talk about that as much because it's like, oh, let's be the best version of ourselves. But what about if you're the worst version of yourself right now? What do you do then? And that's just the episode I feel like we need to start talking about, because a part of being the worst version of yourself is not forgiving who you are or who you were, and forgiving your present self right now. If you're in a rut of knowing that the decisions that you're making, continuously making those decisions, is something that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm confused. Well, the first step towards being unconfused is telling yourself, yo, I forgive who I am and who I was. I have to forgive that, right? There's a certain point when you make a mistake, right? And you continue to rehash that mistake over and over again to yourself, that you become that mistake itself. You're a walking past of yourself every single time because you don't continue to remind yourself of knowing that I'm bigger than that. That whatever happened in the past, you leave it there. We don't continue with it, but we like to carry that like it's a luggage going through the airport, right? And then we like to fly with it, like metaphorically speaking, on different places in our lives because we don't know how to let go of that luggage, right? But part of letting go of that luggage is saying, apologizing to yourself, first and foremost, for asking forgiveness from God and ask forgiveness from those that you hurt, but then saying sorry to yourself, feeling bad for yourself and knowing that, hey, I've done this, but then also persevering and say, I could do better. See, I always say one of the best conversations to have is with yourself. The best conversations to have is with God, but one of the best conversations to have is with yourself. And if you're not talking to yourself and writing this down or journaling some of the things that I'm speaking of, then what are these questions how are these questions going to be answered? How are these questions even going to be asked if you don't like to have these conversations in the first place, right? I always say, you make choices for yourself or life will start making choices for you, right? Time and reality will start answering questions you haven't even asked yourself yet, right? Society already has a template of answers that, for the questions you're not even asking yourself. And one of them, as we're talking about today, is not forgiving yourself. Not knowing that if you're not forgiving yourself, okay, then you're carrying the mistakes with you. And you're allowing those mistakes to represent who you are, your current self, right? And not to mention what branches out is the people around you as well and the content you're consuming, right? So then what does that lead to? It leads to you giving up on your future self, giving up on what could happen and what could possibly be life-changing for you. So that's the part that's very disturbing for a lot of us, because I'll tell you the truth, right? If we're allowing ourselves to be in a place, in such a dark place where we're learning to not come out of, then why are you surprised that those doors are closed? Those doors of opportunity are closed consistently in a constant time, right? Those doors are closed. So a lot of us say, hey, those doors are closed, or you try to, but what if you're just not even knocking on those doors? What if you're allowing yourself to say, hey, I believe in myself of being where I am because there is no better version of who I am. And these are not even words that you're saying to yourself. This is just through your actions, right? Evaluation. If you're not evaluating your actions, then the actions are going to just speak for itself, right? If you're in a rut and you're in a super dark place and surrounding yourself with people, going to the wrong places, consuming content you're not supposed to, wasting just time and time and time, then your actions are speaking for you. There's not even a set of conversation to have, because your actions are speaking for that, right? This is why a lot of us, we like to leave the house so immediately, because a lot of us don't like to live under our own skin. We don't like to have those conversations with ourselves. And then we start to look around and ask ourselves, why are we in the most depressive state that we've ever been? It's because we allowed everything to pile up. And a part of it also, without also evaluating, we also haven't forgave ourselves. We haven't said sorry to who we were. We haven't said sorry to what we are. And we're also now apologizing for our future self that's telling us, hey, please come across the bridge. I'm here. The better version of yourself is on the other side of that bridge. And that, imagine that better version of yourself saying, come, please, cross the bridge. But you haven't even thought of that version of yourself. And then secondly, we haven't even got to the place of having that conversation of thinking that even exists in the first place. So it is a struggle. It's a big time struggle. And the underlying issue from all of that is, it's just not being okay that the past is what we've done and the future is not stemmed from those past decisions that we made. You know, isolation could be healthy to a certain extent, right? Solitude, which is a choice of being alone. But it could also be super unhealthy, because too much of anything is always unhealthy to me, right? Too much of anything is not always good. So to me, when you're doing too much of isolation, it could get to a place of now you're getting yourself out of it. You know, you've heard this saying, I wouldn't say it's a saying, but we've heard, you know, talking yourself out of certain positions. It's true. You could get to a place where you isolate yourself out of positions too. Isolation or solitude is a form for a temporary place to kind of take the clutter out of your mindset or the clutter out of your mentality, and then push yourself into, and obviously apologizing the older version of yourself, and being ecstatic for the newer version of who you are. But then also knowing that, hey, I don't need to constantly think of what my past is, right? And knowing that I've had this conversation, I put in the work, right? I don't care how many therapists you have. If you're not putting the effort at all, and you think a therapist is a magician, then you got everything wrong. A lot of us who strive, we think, oh, I need a therapist. I need all these, different things, different forms of helping with your mental health. If you're not putting the work in, you're just wasting your money and wasting your time. You're wasting your time. If you're not thinking or being proactive to some of the issues that you're having and holding yourself accountable, and also apologizing for who you were before, and not allowing the surroundings to dictate what you could be, then there's no sense of going to somebody that could help you, but primarily they're guiding you without having to put in the work at all. It just becomes a useless conversation. The more attention you receive, if you tell multiple people of your issues without making a solution, then you're looking for attention. And it just becomes entertainment. It becomes a story for everybody that you're sharing those issues with, if you're not being proactive with it. One or two people that can help you and guide you and be a part of that process is cool. But if you're just telling the story to other people about and just strictly complaining, it just becomes entertainment for both you guys, right? The person that's hearing your story, that now has something on you whenever they feel like they want to pull something on you, right? Especially if you're sharing something that's really important to you. But simultaneously, you're also telling yourself that I'm not being proactive. I'd rather talk about it because it's more entertaining. A lot of us think a form of entertainment just comes from just watching TV and movies, but it doesn't. A form of entertainment just comes, sometimes you pretend to educate yourself, but really if you're not putting the action behind it, it becomes entertainment too. Your life can become an entertainment without even knowing it, right? It could just become, every step you're taking just has no value in it at all. Or every conversation you're having with people has no value at all. Because you're just not, again, taking the proactive steps to becoming who you want to be. So I think the subject in this episode was just really important, because I see a lot of us, we don't really have the tendency to kind of help ourselves by forgiving who we can be or who we were, and just being apologetic for the decisions that we're making, but also learning to move on. A lot of us move on without even talking about it with ourselves, but also a lot of us really don't think about it in a major way. So to me, when we're not forgiving ourselves for our past, then what business, what value, what currency, what exchange are you having with the world if the world sees insecurities from you, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't have insecurities. I think we're constantly going to have insecurities with our lives. There's a new set of insecurities every single time as you grow. But simultaneously, the worst part of having those new insecurities is still holding on to the old ones, right? So in order to create something and be creative and have a creative mind as well, is to clear that clutter of knowing there's self-doubt and there's people around you that will just continue to remind you of your past, which is completely unfair to the future version of yourself. So to me, I'm just going to leave it there. Alhamdulillah, I just thought this episode was really important for every single one of us. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode, and we'll get into even more stuff, inshallah. See you guys later.